directly to the killer, who may be in this room. We believe you are hiding in plain sight. For more than 2 years, you never thought we would shift gears to a different investigative strategy, but we have.
People say that having a best friend means you can lean on them, and that was true for Libby and Abigail until they died in a terrible accident. A few hours after Libby shared this picture online, she and Abigail disappeared without a trace, starting one of the scariest mysteries in Delhi. Over the years, creepy theories have been put forward, including the idea that the girls were sacrificed by a dark cult, which police have shockingly not completely ruled out. However, did that really happen, or was the killer just smart enough to hide?
The result of the new information and intelligence over time leads us to believe the sketch, which you will see shortly, is the person responsible for the murders of these 2 little girls.
Everyone was on edge at this press meeting in 2019. Doug Carter from the Indiana State Police sent the killer a scary message saying that they were probably hiding in plain sight, mixing in with the people who had just been through one of the worst crimes in the state's history. To understand how important his warning was, let's go back 2 years to Monday, February 13th, 2017. 13. Abigail Williams, and 14. Liberty German, who went by the name Libby, were best friends who did everything together. They were at Libby's house that Sunday night, happy about having a rare Monday off from school. They worked on projects in Libby's room and played softball in the backyard during the evening. Abby brought a box of art and craft tools with her. By Monday afternoon, their creative drive had turned into a desire to go on a trip. They planned to go to a nature area close to the Monan High Bridge, which is a popular place to hang out in Delhi. They got Kelsey, Libby's older sister, to drive them there, and they were dropped off near the bridge at 1:30 in the afternoon. Now, the area had both rough beauty and quiet charm. There were trails through the trees that went to the huge Monan High Bridge. People from the area still came to this old railway bridge, which was built in 1891 to enjoy the view, take pictures, and relax in the peaceful atmosphere. It was a great place for 2 best friends to hang out, laugh, and make memories. But what began that day as a fun trip quickly turned into a terrible tragedy that shook Delhi to its core. A little after 2:07 in the afternoon, Libby posted a picture of Abby carefully walking across the old worn-down wooden planks of the Monan High Bridge on Snapchat. That picture was the last thing anyone saw of the 2 best friends. That night, when Libby's dad came to pick them up, the girls were nowhere to be found. At first, there was confusion, and as calls to their phones went unanswered, fear grew. Dad looked for them and called their names, but all he could hear was the silence of the trees. He called Kelsey and asked if she had heard from the girls or if he was in the wrong place. He and she hadn't. By evening, I was scared. The cops were called, and what began as a family search quickly turned into a huge community effort. People in the area yelled for Abby and Libby as search teams went through the paths and woods around the bridge. It was impossible to find the girls' cell phones. People in the area say that night there were so many flashlights shining in the woods that they looked like stars. The whole community was looking for Abby and Libby. Some people thought the girls might have gone somewhere or been partying, but their families didn't believe them. As the hours went by, the search was finally stopped just before midnight. Police told everyone that there was no proof that the girls were in immediate danger and that the search would begin again in the morning. Nobody gave up hope the next day, February 14th. They were all hoping for a miracle, but then something shocking was found. Someone on the search team found Abby and Libby, but it wasn't good. The girls' bodies were found less than a mile from where they were dropped off the day before. They had been killed. The police were now trying to figure out who did it, but the killer's name stayed a secret for months, even though they got a lot of tips. This small town of about 3,000 people was completely shaken. People couldn't believe that 2 young girls were killed in broad daylight. The shock spread through the whole town. Libby's own phone was one of the most important pieces of proof. The police found that Libby had been filming Abby as she crossed the bridge. She also recorded the sound and image of a man walking next to them in that film. It was the man in the video who became known as Bridge Guy. Police think he killed them. The police released still images from the video in the hopes that the public would help. They weren't the whole video, but they were enough to possibly help someone remember. They also drew a picture of a man seen on the road that day based on what witnesses said about him. Bridge Guy was said to be a white guy who was 5 feet 6 inches to 5 feet 10 inches tall, weighed 180 to 200 pounds, 220 pounds, and had reddish-brown hair. A man in blue pants, a blue jacket, and a hoodie was shown in the blurry pictures. Based on what witnesses said, the police also shared 2 sketches. One sketch showed a man who looked older, and the other showed a man who looked younger. Even with all of this, no one was arrested. In order to move the case along, the police released a clip of the man's voice that could be heard saying "down the hill" in the video that Libby had taken. The goal of this new piece of evidence was to get people interested and, hopefully, lead to a tip. At the time, the police said that the tape might have been from a crime in order to keep the focus on finding the person who did it. Another important thing investigators said was that they thought the killer either lived in Delhi or knew the area well, either because they worked there or had some other link. Everyone was on edge because the killer knew the area. They were hoping that someone would recognize the voice, the face, or the details and help solve the case. It had been more than 2 years since the bodies of Libby and Abby were found. In April 2019, the police held another news conference that got everyone's attention. At this meeting, ISP Superintendent Doug Carter made a direct plea to the killer. His words were, "I know you're hiding in plain sight. I think you still have a little bit of a conscience, and I can promise you that how you left them in the woods is not what they're going through now." At this point, the cops had a lot of leads and knew a lot of people who might be involved with the case and be suspects. Some of them looked like the 2 sketches the police had shown, but Ron Logan was one of the first names that came to mind. The older man lived in Delhi, Indiana, and had something to do with the case that wasn't just because of his age. It was where he lived, little more than a mile away from Logan's land, close to where the girls were last seen, on the Monan High Bridge. Their bodies were found. Being so close to everyone made Logan a very interesting person right away in a small town like Delhi. Logan had lived on a quiet country road for more than 50 years, close to the trail that went to the Monan High Bridge. People often walked their dogs in that quiet area, so it didn't seem like a place where something terrible could happen. But after the bodies of the girls were found, that quiet place seemed much darker and scarier. When the girls went missing, Logan didn't do much to help himself. He told the cops that he had been at an aquarium while he was away, which seemed like a pretty good excuse. Things went in a strange direction after that. It turned out that Logan had asked a family member to lie about where he was that day. That was a big red flag. He wouldn't try to hide where he was if he didn't have anything to hide. When the FBI got involved a month after the killings, things got even more complicated. Back in March 2017, Ronald Logan's house, garage, pickup truck, computers, and cell phones were all open for the FBI to search. The FBI agent made it clear in the warrant request that they had a good reason to think Logan killed the people, and that proof could be found on his land. The agent went into great depth about why they thought Logan was involved. Before we get to that, though, the request brought to light some previously unknown facts about the crime scene. First, the FBI reported that one of the victims was missing a piece of clothing. At the scene of the crime, there were no signs of a battle or fight. Investigators found fibers and hairs that they couldn't identify. The bodies also looked like they had been moved and posed. The agent even brought up the famous video on Libby's phone and confirmed that it was 43 seconds long, even though the world had only seen a few seconds of it up to that point. The attacker was seen on video following the girls on the Monan High Bridge trail. There were no signs of a fight that could be seen. More strange things were found in the search order for Logan's property, which was right next to where the girls' bodies were found. A police officer from the FBI said Logan had asked a family member to make up a fake excuse for the afternoon the girls went missing. On top of that, cell tower data showed that Logan's phone was near where the girls went missing, and later that night, it was near where the bodies were found. Logan's ex-girlfriends also spoke out, saying troubling things about how he behaved. Both women said he had hurt them physically, and one said he had threatened her by saying he would kill her and no one would ever find her body. The agent also said that the victims had lost a lot of blood and that it was likely that the killer had blood on them or their clothes. Another thing that was missing from one of the girls were 2 pieces of clothes. It also looked like the bodies had been moved and staged on purpose. The police officer thought that the killer might have taken something as a souvenir or done something else to mark the place of the crime. As police searched Logan's land, they hoped to find something that would connect him to the killings. He kept saying, though, that he had been 20 miles away in Lafayette buying tropical fish and hadn't come home until 6:30 in the evening. But when the police checked his story, they found that his cousin, who was meant to be with him, didn't support it. In fact, they couldn't prove any part of Logan's excuse. Even though Logan's home and other areas were searched extensively as part of the investigation, no clear evidence linking him to the murders was found. He had been in trouble with the law before, including being convicted of DUI, and as part of his punishment, he wasn't allowed to drive. Investigators thought that was the reason he asked his family member to lie for him. Logan was later arrested for breaking the terms of his probation, which had nothing to do with the killings at the deli. While he was in jail, investigators were able to search his property again, but this time they did not find any direct proof that linked him to the crime. When Logan died in 2020 from COVID-19, there was no longer any reason to be suspicious about him. Only when it looked like things were over did another person of interest show up. This time his name was Keegan Anthony Klein. At the time, Klein was 30 years old and had a scary past of catfishing on the internet. He had several accounts, and one of them was called Anthony Shots. Police think that the Anthony Shots Instagram account was used to ask young girls for sexy pictures. Things get worse, though, because Klein was talking to Libby German on the day of the killings. Besides that, he is said to have told another girl that he was meeting Libby that day. It was hard to ignore how strange it was that the last person Libby talked to was someone who preys on children online. Was it just a coincidence, or did Klein know the killer in some way? Could he have had something to do with the crime? The police searched his home in Peru, Indiana right away. Even though Klein was never officially charged with the killings, what they found in his home was enough to bring serious charges. During the search, police found explicit pictures of children. He was then arrested on charges of child abuse and having child pornography on his person. Officer Christopher Seal of the Indiana State Police said that Klein used fake identities to get girls between the ages of 12 and 18 to send him sexy pictures or videos. Investigators found 11 victims, but they thought there were more who hadn't come forward yet. In an interview in a jail in 2022, Klein claimed that he had tried to get girls underage to send him explicit pictures, but he said he had no plans to meet any of them in real life. He said he did it because he was lonely and didn't know why. Klein admitted to the charges and was given a 40-year prison term with an extra 3 years thrown out. His punishment made me think of how bad his crimes were, but it still didn't end the case of Abby and Libby. 22 years had passed since the horrible killings, and many people were afraid that justice would never be done. It looked like the case had gone cold for years. Agents weren't making much progress, and people were getting more and more angry. After that, on October 26th, that same year, everything changed when Richard Allen, 50, was caught and charged with killing Abby and Libby. The news came as a surprise. In the small town of Delhi, Richard Allen wasn't a stranger or an unknown person. He was a well-known face. He was married with a daughter and worked at the local CVS pharmacy. It's shocking that he even printed memorial pictures for the families of the victims. How could someone who is so involved in the community be able to do something so horrible? It was hard to believe, but maybe, just maybe, Indiana State Police Superintendent Doug Carter was right 3 years ago when he said the killer is hiding in plain sight. Before, it looked like the case would be very hard to solve. Now it was taking a shocking turn that no one saw coming. There were over 70,000 tips, a huge number of sketches of possible suspects, and even the famous grainy video from Libby's phone that helped them find the killer. But it took almost 6 years of diligent looking. When police finally got close to Allen, it made people wonder how they had missed him for so long. Why did this puzzle piece take so long to fit? It turned out that Richard "Rich" Allen, who had lived in Delhi for years, put himself on the suspect list the day of the killings by dressing exactly like the bridge guy that witnesses had described. Even scarier were the reports from several people who said they saw someone on the road that day who looked a lot like Richard. One person who saw what happened said they saw a man walking down the road with his clothes dirty and bloody. Then detectives found a used bullet at the crime scene that fit a gun that Richard Allen owned. This was a great piece of proof that linked him directly to the crime. Richard was taken quickly, but his lawyers quickly released a statement to clear the air about their client and the investigation that was still going on. In their statement, the defenders made a number of important points. I'm going to quote them. Richard, who is 50 years old, has never been jailed or charged with a crime in his whole life. He doesn't do these things, so he has no idea why he is being charged with them. After Libby German and Abby Williams went missing, the police did not call Rick. Instead, Rick called the police and volunteered to talk about being on the trail that day. Rick wanted to help in any way he could, just like many other people in Delhi. He called the cops to say that, as he often did, he had walked on the trail that day. Without Rick's statement, it's likely that the cops would not have known that he was on the trail that day. Richard was taken into custody quickly, but his lawyers quickly put out a statement to clear the air about their client and the investigation that was still going on. The defense spoke out and made some very important points. I'm going to quote them. Richard, who is 50 years old, has never been arrested or jailed. He doesn't do these things, so he doesn't understand why he's being charged with them. There was no call to Rick from the cops when Libby German and Abby Williams went missing. Rick called the cops instead and offered to talk about being on the trail that day. Like many other people in Delhi, Rick wanted to help in any way he could. He told the police that he had walked on the trail that day, as he often did. The police probably would not have known that Rick was on the trail that day without his story. The statement went on to say that Rick went back to working at the local CVS and hadn't heard from the cops for more than 5 years after giving them this information. He didn't hear from police again until October 2022, which was around the time of a close sheriff's race. Some people thought the timing was a little off. The defense team also said that Richard hadn't gotten rid of his car, guns, or clothes in the 5 years since he told the police he was telling the truth. The defense said that he was acting like an innocent man because he hadn't changed how he looked or moved. He just kept doing what he normally did. But things took a shocking new turn when, months later, new papers showed shocking details. The reports showed that Richard was said to have admitted to killing the people more than once. It is said that he told these lies on the phone with his wife Kathy, and even with his mother. In all of these cases, Kathy is said to have cut the call off quickly after the statements. Richard's mental health quickly got worse. He lost weight, stopped eating and sleeping, and even broke his computer, which was the only thing that kept him in touch with the outside world. He started to act out and do strange things, like eating court papers from his lawyers. This new information made the case even worse. The defense said that these statements were not reliable because Richard was in protective confinement and was in a lot of mental distress at the time. Even though the defense wanted Richard to be moved to a different facility, the judge refused because he thought Richard was getting better care than other prisoners in the same jail. But the plan got messier again. The defense put in a strange 136-page memo that took the attention off of Richard Allen and put it on a group of people who follow Odinism, a pagan Norse religion. The defense said that these people were guilty for the murders. In the report, the defense talked about what an FBI agent said in 2017, that it looked like the bodies of Abby and Libby had been manipulated and staged on purpose. Before this, not much was known about the crime scene. No autopsy results were made public, and the only things that were shared online were text messages that were said to have been written by David, Abby's uncle. The texts told us that the bodies of the girls were found close to each other, touching but not tied together. The top half of Libby's body was covered in sticks and leaves, while the bottom half was dressed. It was said that their throats had been cut. The most shocking new information was that the defense said they found marks at the crime scene that looked like runes, which are connected to Odinism. They said that these symbols were left by people who were part of this Odinist group. This took the attention off of Richard and hinted at a much darker and more complicated story. The fact that Libby's body was found at the base of a tree was one of the most shocking parts. The tree was touching her left arm, which was stretched out above her head. Her right arm was lying by her side. A planned pattern of many branches were put over her, including one big branch that went from her head to her legs. The defense said that the fact that there was no blood near Libby's neck or the tree meant that she may have been killed somewhere else before being moved. The body of Abby was found only a few feet away. It was fully dressed, but in Libby's jeans and hoodie. The defense said that Abby had been killed before, and then the accused killers fixed things. Even though she had fatal neck cuts, there wasn't much blood on her clothes besides around her neck, which suggests she tried to keep her body clean. Abby's body was positioned so that her right leg was bent under her left leg. On top of her, branches were placed in a way that looked like an asterisk. The defense also said that one of the branches looked like it had been cut off neatly, which was a sign of planning ahead. Smaller sticks were put over Abby's hair to make them look like horns or antlers. A red F-shaped mark on a nearby tree was proven to be Libby's blood, which was another disturbing detail. The defense said that this sign looked like the rune Ansus, which means Odin in Norse. They also showed the Hagalaz sign that was on Abby's body and said it was connected to the Norse god of hail. The defense thought that these runes pointed to a religious reason for the killings. The defense questioned the prosecution's timeline, which said the killings happened within a short window of time. They said it was impossible for one person, especially someone as small as Richard Allen, to have killed everyone by themselves. They asked about the bullet found buried between the girls and how it was linked to Allen's gun. They also wanted to know when it was found, right after the bodies were found, or days later. The defense said that the killings could not have been done in such a short amount of time by one person. There was also a link between Abby and Odinism in the defense. B.H., the father of Abby's accused boyfriend, had ties to Odinism and had made social media posts that looked like the symbols that were found at the crime scene. The defense said that B.H. had talked about the crime scene before the public knew more about it. The disturbing meme that B.H. shared days after the murders, making fun of people who help dispose of bodies and stay silent, was also part of the theory. The defense brought up another possible suspect and said he admitted to being involved in the killings. The defense also said that some police officers who were involved in the case secretly believed in the Odinism theory but didn't say anything about it so that the focus would be on Allen. In terms of Allen's mental health, the defense said that his worsening situation in prison may have caused him to give false confessions. They said that he confessed because Odinists acting as guards had made threats against him. They also said that the lead detective had hidden important evidence in order to get a warrant to search Allen's home. The destruction of evidence was another important problem that came up. The defense said that interviews with witnesses that took place over 70 days had been lost. These interviews could have been very important in the early stages of the probe. When the defense tried to question the prosecution's case, this made them even more angry. For 3 days in 2024, the defense's Odinism theory was discussed, and the prosecution showed proof that it was false. A blood spatter expert was called in by the prosecution. He said that the blood on the tree was not drawn, but rather a transfer stain. Even though the expert couldn't say for sure who gave the blood, the defense also said that Allen's over 60 statements were forced and shouldn't be used in court. They said Allen's mental health had gotten worse because he was being treated badly in a maximum security prison, which caused him to go crazy from stress. Many people who saw Allen's situation getting worse said he was acting strangely and eventually admitted to killing the people. A DNA expert also said that Allen's DNA was not found at the crime scene or on any of the things that were found at his home. Neither Libby nor Abby's DNA was found either. Even though his statement seemed to be a big step towards solving the case, there wasn't enough physical proof to prove that he was involved. Police only looked at the .40 caliber bullet that was found near the bodies of the girls as important proof. The prosecution's expert said it matched Allen's gun, but the defense didn't believe them. They said there weren't enough pictures of the cartridge, and they even said the bullet might have come from a police officer's gun. That made a lot of people wonder how reliable this piece of proof is. The prosecution also worked hard to connect Allen to the scary video and audio recording of Bridge Guy that Libby made on her phone right before the girls were killed. Master Trooper Brian Harshman of the state police looked over more than 700 of Allen's jail calls and said that he thought the voice on that recording was Allen's. Someone said something brave, but some people still didn't believe it. Then the day came. Allen was found guilty on all counts on November 11th, 2024. A month later, on December 20th, 2024, Judge Gull gave him a sentence of 130 years in jail, with 65 years for killing each girl. The sentences had to be served one after the other. He was taken right away to the Westville Correctional Facility to begin his sentence. There is still a big gap between people, even though some were glad that justice was done. A lot of people want to know why it took 5 years for someone to link Allen to the case. Nobody looked into Allen sooner, even though there were sketches, videos, and sounds to look into. Besides, he was caught right before an election for sheriff, which made people even more suspicious. Did everything happen by chance, or was there more to the story? This has led to some very heated arguments. What do you think? Do you think Logan, the first person who was thought to have killed, might have been the killer instead of Allen? Thanks for watching. If you enjoy true crime stories, make sure to like and subscribe. Stay safe and see you in the next video.